When a political party or a social movement start treating a oppressive government or oppressive government system or governance system like it is the norm or it is legitimate, then that political party or social movement start becoming a loyal opposition rather than a resistance against such oppressive system or governance. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stream Dialogue. A perfect example as it relates to Pan Africanism as we try to push and just throughout the world is the ANC. The ANC was born out of fighting colonialism and apartheid. And we saw coming to power of the ANC. Yes, they fought the apartheid regime of South Africa. The apartheid regime fell, but the political apartheid went away, but the economic apartheid remained. And one of the issue is that actually I learned this from someone on TikTok. Believe me, he passed. I don't remember his handle. It came across my For You page, so just a glance. I'll see if I can tag it in this video. But gave me the idea of how this idea of loyal opposition pertain to African country, the global south, whether it's throughout the Caribbean or so forth, the African world. The ANC fought the colonial apartheid regime, defeated it, at least politically, and then they asked for reform within that system. So the apartheid system didn't went away. The political side went away. Those who were fighting the colonial system end up getting political power. But the economic apartheid remained. All the resources were in the hands of the same apartheid economic operators. All the strategic resources, the banking, and so forth, the whole economy remained in the same hands of those people. So, therefore, fighting the system within the system to reform the system never works out in the favor of the masses, the popular masses. Which brings me to party politics, opposition politics. Opposition politics always seems to reform a certain system. It doesn't matter how oppressive that system is, how oppressive that government is, but that political parties always look to work within that system rather than systematic change for the people and for the betterment of that nation or that group. So political parties that are seeking systematic change is a plus, but rather than systematic reform, because an oppressive system cannot be reformed to serve the nation or serve its people, which is why continuously these problems seems to be there all the while. It's never resolved, and it seems like it can never resolve, which is the method of fighting that system or resisting that system. And most of the time, political parties, of course, they work together. Uh, yes, they're in opposition, but still, whenever they get to power, the same thing happens, and even worse sometimes, because it is not about a systematic change. It's not about a political party, but it is about the system that occupies power, the system that grinds and continuously leave the population in misery and suffering. One political party can be in power and they will sell natural resources. Stick with Africa and the Caribbean and for a while. One political party can be in power. They will sell the mineral resources for nothing. Example, they will be getting 3% of the lithium revenue, while the multinational take what, 97%. The opposition will be arguing that no, we shouldn't take 3%, but we will rather take, let's say, 10%, 20%, 30%. But that is not a plus. That is the whole point of loyal opposition is to argue within that system, which is to argue within that framework. There's a certain line it will not cross. So opposition will be asking for a larger percent of revenue from the raw materials that is not being processed, that is not being used to industrialize that country to get a better yield, higher revenue to the country, which will bring social development. But still, the opposition will argue for higher percentage, which is not feasible for development. You will notice neither decides to process the material, neither decides to add value to the material, neither decide to nationalize those materials or resources for the benefit of the people. And you can see it in the justice system as well. Nobody is calling for, a new, whether it's social justice, economic justice for the people. It's always, let's do justice reform. But the laws are there, but you need a system that is strong to enforce that system. And the only thing we believe that that can bring long lasting, permanent change is through a revolutionary concept. And by arguing for systematic reform rather than systematic change, this loyal opposition to the system or government, they normalize suffering, they normalize underdevelopment, they normalize corruption, they normalize imperialism. And when the people are coming to this conclusion that these opposition parties, these social groups, these social movement are not making the change that they should be making, or they are not arguing against the system, the loyal opposition, it's in their interest, of course, argue for, we're protecting that democracy, which is that you should do it through the ballot, which is not wrong in a sense. It's not wrong because the rule of law has to prevail. Uh, you vote these people in, but these people are not carrying out the will of the people. They are not carrying out the change that people need. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why we call for grassroots movements, grassroots organization to oppose the loyal opposition as well as the system that prevail and the oppressive government, wherever you are in the world, wherever you find yourself and you have an oppressive government, people organization is what cause change, that brings change. And another way the loyal opposition argue within the system rather than to cause change, cause systematic change, is that there will be every election cycle there are these things: the price of food, the cost of living, corruption, and so forth. They will argue that the ruling party is what causing this, rather than it is the system that thrives on these bad behavior, that rewards these bad behaviors, such as corruption, poverty, extreme poverty, to exploit labor and resources. So this is a way they argue within that framework. They will say, "Oh, we will stop corruption." They wouldn't say, "We will get rid of this system that causes corruption." And one of the things that loyal opposition normally does or don't do is that it doesn't argue against the ruling class, the oligarchies, the millionaires, the billionaires, those who control the economy, those who benefit from the resources being sold off for cheap, or so forth. Or rather, they wouldn't argue against the multi corporations who are taking huge profit. We see what is happening in Botswana, we see what is happening in Niger, that they're taking control of their prized possession, their natural resources, and these international organizations, in collusion with these multinationals, are arguing against, warning them not to take their resources. They're fighting tooth and nail in order to continue to get these natural resources for free. Well, not free, but basically nothing. So this is why opposition politics is not the way to go, rather than a grassroots, indigenous resistance to the power that be and the system that prevails today. And the legal system is normally weaponized to protect these oligarchs and even protect these political parties, these the loyal opposition. The whole seems to work in this framework. Have you noticed that people rarely go to jail? Sometimes they come to power, they can manipulate this legal system to use against those who really wants change. And of course, the elites normally get away with whatever they did. When was the last time you saw a billionaire who went to jail for doing X, Y, and Z? Even though normally they're implicated in a lot of wrong behaviors, a lot of they break laws. Actually, these elites break more laws than the regular person because the regular person will go to jail for any little thing. Because actually, in most countries, there's a prison industrial complex that feeds on the working poor going to jail. An opposition will always muddy the water, cause confusion rather than tackling the main issue, the main uh, systematic problems that allows for these bad behaviors, whether it's corruption or the prevailing of poverty and underdevelopment. And the one thing the masses of the people need to know is that clarity is everything. We have to be clear. People have to be clear on what is needed. The way to get there might be different from everyone. Every country is different. Every state is different. Every people might be different. But the main thing is clarity. Clarity of objective, clarity of path, and so forth. And understand that this loyal opposition that has been around for decades, wherever you are, whether it's since independence, they have not enact the changes that is needed. In real terms, they're actually making the situation worse. They're making, I mean, look, poverty, technology have increased, but still poverty have increased. The more it seems like, the more as time goes on, the more incapable they have shown themselves to solve these problems within our society. So, ladies and gentlemen, organization of working class people, organization of youths to enact these change that society really deserve, rather than opposition politics, party politics, and these other tricks that these loyal opposition to the system, not loyal to their to the opposition political party, but to the system. That is what uh, we need. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.